This is for the million people watching online right now.
Exactly.
All those viewers.
Hello, my name is Nina Dornheim. I'm a representative for Hecho por Nosotros here in New York and the UN, and I'm a fashion designer. Hecho por Nosotros is an NGO with consultative status at the UN, and we work to promote sustainability in the world of fashion, find comprehensive solutions for creating the new paradigm of a sustainable fashion industry. You will hear more about Hecho por Nosotros and animaná from my colleagues Nikita Varma and Kate Holzman. And today in this event, our panelists will debate the current transformation in the fashion and textile industry that is inspired by the Sustainable Development Goals and how this can contribute to a shift towards a more sustainable and resilient society. Well, at Hecho por Nosotros, we believe that the environmental crisis requires that we make different choices about the role of fashion. We need a new framework of concepts, results, and procedures, which is built on a new set of values. This framework needs a new purpose, new ways of distributing power and benefit, new economic models, a changing fashion culture, fewer pieces, done with respect to people, environment, and culture. And this is where we look to indigenous people for inspiration and their wisdom to coexist with nature in harmony.
Hello, everybody. So nice to be here. Thank you so much. I'm just going to jump right into it. It was a beautiful introduction. I have some incredible actors and panelists with me on stage today who I'm going to let tell you a little about themselves. First is Kate Holzman from animaná, Andrea Reyes on the end there from New York Fair Trade Coalition, and Rachel Tobias, independent consultant in BFDA. So,
animaná is a social enterprise based in Argentina and producing clothing, home goods, and accessories throughout the Andes and Patagonia. And shall I tell you all about it? Okay. So essentially, it's a luxury line intended to really cooperate with artisans, preserve their ancestral techniques, create production methods that have a very low impact on the local environment, and to really champion the local materials in those regions. So the line is very heavy on camelid fibers, so coming from the alpacas, llamas, and vicuñas in the area. So they're sort of animals that have roamed those lands for generations, and they're up at like 4,000 feet and are tended to by many of the communities in those areas. And so what animaná does is works with the folks in those communities who have been using those fibers and those sort of natural dye techniques, ancestral weaving methods passed down from generations and generations, and then sort of combines those with very classic modern design that we know will do well in international markets. So there's a component that's about sort of preserving culture, preserving craft techniques, and then also really creating sustainable livelihoods for folks in those communities.
I think the biggest hurdle, particularly in the fashion industry, is we are now trained as consumers to buy things very cheaply. And until the last 10 or 15 years, we didn't realize what the real cost was behind that cheap t-shirt. And so now that we know, and a lot of people get it, it's not too late, but it's too late. People are still accustomed to that. So one of the biggest hurdles, and we were talking about this a minute ago, somebody in the audience, is what came first, the corporation or the consumer, the chicken or the egg. So whose behavior do we need to change to improve these things? And really, at the end of the day, it's both. And that's a huge hurdle because you have corporations after profit and you have consumers after cheap products.
Yeah, I guess from sort of like a luxury standpoint, historically, or at least recently, it's been framed as certain items from certain sort of like luxury houses, brand names, sort of splashed across things, and just a sort of very high price point. And what we're trying to do is really shift the idea of luxury to, something that, yes, is beautiful and timeless and classic, and that also you can feel very confident has been made to last, made to have as little impact on the environment as possible, that was made by probably, a number of people in any given village who have worked on it and put sort of their, generations of knowledge into it. And so what you end up with is really sort of like a future heirloom kind of item.
Can I have a question on that?
Yeah.
Really great question. How then has sustainable luxury brands that you work with empowered artists and businesses? How does that empower that side of the business?
Yeah, so, I think if a business like Animaná is successful, what it creates is sustainable income for artisans, for villages, and so they are able to count on that work coming in, month after month. They're able to know that the brand is going to stick around, that they can depend on that work. They're able to make investments in their workshops. They're able to do a number of sort of training workshops that we have and that we run with our partners to learn new techniques, both in terms of production, but also in terms of just running their own businesses. And so we're able to invest a lot back into those areas and into those artisans so that they can not just work with us, but also work with other brands. And now they kind of have the capacity to do so.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think so much of it has to do with the leadership too. We look at Patagonia and we look at Eileen Fisher, and it is the leadership that they have steered that boat in that direction. And yes, it came from customers, but it kind of came together. And you talk to people at Eileen Fisher, and they say their customer doesn't really care about the sustainability. Their average age is a 60-year-old woman who consumes there, and Eileen Fisher does it because that is what's in her kind of DNA. So it makes me think a lot about like Nike, the CEO of Nike. Not that wonderful of a human being. I don't know if you guys know, but there's a lot of like women are not treated very nicely. Yeah. So I think it's our responsibility to get specific and to say, hey, Nike, we don't like your CEO, and we want you to put somebody in there who is ethical, who cares about sustainability, and to call these people out on a level that is, we know you have a $100,000 boat. Do you think that's ethical? I think we have to call them out on their specific lifestyle and really kind of pluck them off to not get too aggressive with it. But I think that's where we kind of need to go instead of just the customer, because education is not that great in this country. And to take it to a level of sustainability, we're really blessed in New York City to have so much access to it. But a lot of other places definitely don't.
For sure.
I think there's sort of a couple parts of it. So, if it's a small workshop, it's very easy to get a sense of exactly what is going on there. And, it's not like it's a huge factory of 2,000 people that needs to have like really complicated fire door, regulations that they have to meet. But for very small producers, it's also very, very hard to go through the entire process to actually get certified as a fair trade factory or something like that. And I saw this when I ran my own brand as well. You have companies and cooperatives and workshops that are actually doing a really good job and they're doing the right thing. But if they're 12 people, it might be very challenging for them to go through all the steps to actually get that certification. It doesn't make their work any less ethical. It doesn't mean that, their workers are having any less a positive experience. But to actually get there and get the seal of approval, probably not.
Okay. Thank you so much.
We're filming?
Okay, great. Okay, so we're back for round 2 of the Hecho por Nosotros talks at the United Nations. I've got 3 incredible panelists here with me today. To my right is Nikita Varma from Hecho por Nosotros. John Meyers down the end, impact investment guru. I like to say guru. He is a guru. And Jim Warnock, a human rights expert from the Human Rights Foundation. So I'd love to give the floor to these wonderful people to give us a top line of who they are and the foundations that they come from and what they do. So Nikita, can you take it away?
Sure.
Okay, great.
So I'm Nikita and I'm representing Hecho por Nosotros here today. I'm also a designer by profession and I have a background in finance. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the organization Hecho por Nosotros. It is a non-profit organization based in Argentina. It has the consultative status with the UN. It's a member of ECOSOC and does a lot of advocacy at the UN and other parts of the world. Like Kate has talked a little bit about animaná. Animaná is the sustainable fashion label part of it, and Hecho por Nosotros does more of the work with artisan communities in terms of women's empowerment for the women, artisan women who work from homes in the Andean region. So countries like Argentina, Bolivia, Peru, Colombia, Ecuador. They do capacity building for the artisans. They work with artisans to work with natural fibers. With animaná, they work with natural fibers. So, like the whole process, they use natural raw material. The design is sustainable, so they try to preserve the ancient techniques of those regions, and they also try to bring the artisan work closer to the global market. And one of the main things that Hecho por Nosotros concentrates is on creating awareness about sustainable fashion, and through like a lot of different initiatives. UN advocacy is one of them, but also they run a lot of workshops, seminars, webinars, work with fashion schools, and create events all over the world. Actually, they do mapping of fashion, sustainable fashion in different countries, and work with different organizations all over the world. Like Fabric of Change is based in India. We do a lot of basically raising awareness about sustainable fashion. As I mentioned before, we work with the artisans in these communities in the Latin America region. And we do a lot of capacity building for them through education, also health and education for these communities. And we work in sustainable fashion through animaná. We create sustainable fashion products. So we work with these artisans and try to preserve their ancient techniques and the way of creating things. We try to bring their products we connect them basically to the global market through our networks, and also one of our main activities is to raise awareness about sustainable fashion through advocacy. We try to talk to different communities across the world. We organize events like this actually, and where we talk about sustainable fashion. We connect with a lot of different connect and collaborate with a lot of different individuals who are passionate about sustainability, especially in the fashion industry and even other industries which are like connected with fashion. So we're trying to increase the mapping of sustainable fashion across the world. We started with Latin America, but now we are moving forward in different parts of the world.
I actually just want to add something on to what she was saying before about scaling, which I'm actually, from a practical standpoint, I'm kind of encouraged. I don't think it's realistic that artisan craft is going to scale to a point where we're going to be in every Walmart around the country. And honestly, that's a good thing. As technology is developing and a lot more mainstream manufacturing is going to be replacing people on the ground that are actually doing sewing, and 3D printing is going to take over some of this fast fashion and cheap fashion. The real luxury and the real desire is going to be in handcraft. It's going to be in seeing that a human hand or eyeballs or this skill that's been passed down for generation is a part of the story of that garment. So I'm really encouraged. I think in the future, that's really what people are going to be invested in. And actually value comes from scarcity. So people are going to be willing to pay top dollar for. Although I'm sure the people you're employing want to.
One line. So scaling, I meant just not an artisan, but also like there's a lot of innovation that's happening in sustainable fashion field. They're trying to grow leather in a lab.
Mushroom.
Things like that. So unless and these kind of technological innovations, unless there are big investment behind it, it's not going to go too far.
John, so collaboration. What's your experience working with either Hecho por Nosotros or other artisans with that collaboration on sustainable development goals, promoting that or fostering? Do you have any Any?
No, again, when there's money going into investing into the sector, there has to be collaboration, and some of it's between the NGOs who are like Hecho por Nosotros, who are working with artisan groups, and there has to be collaboration with the community that they're working in, on the market side as well, which is very critical because the market side sends a signal: do they want to buy? And if they don't want to buy, then this is all for naught. Then it's not just financially sustainable, and this runs counter to what we're trying to ultimately accomplish.
Are there steps that small businesses or artisan businesses can take to present themselves to investors to get to where you're at?
No, it's really working with your buyers. Ultimately it goes back to who's buying the product and providing them with a quality good in a timely fashion at a fair price. And that's where that has to be collaborated. And there are roles for NGOs to help producers negotiate those things, because there are people who will be literally taken to the floor.
We do have to wrap this up, but I just want one tip from you guys, from your sectors, on what people can do to get involved.
I think to make fashion more sustainable, it's as a consumer, we need to really think about what we are buying, where things are coming from, because I think that's the most practical tip. And also just not be aware ourselves, but also try to make your friends and family aware of what's sustainable and what is not. Mm-hmm. So I think that's very important.
That's a great tip.
Yeah.
Yeah, just do your research. A lot of the information is out there, and you were talking about like how can people shop responsibly when Walmart's their only option. But at least now, I can't shop online because I have a weird shaped body and I have to try everything on. But a lot of people, there are online resources where you can verify, and I can, Remake and Human Rights Foundation, Wear Your Values. We have a lot of brands that we really advocate for. And so, just it's about shopping responsibly and making sure that you use your dollar in a way that sits with your conscience.
Shop your values, wear your values.
I just want to say one thing. We are really beating down Walmart, but Walmart does have a very big sustainability initiative going on at this point. They are actually one of the most growing sustainable company right now.
I'm from Alabama. Walmart's like in my DNA.
That's true. That's actually very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Cool.
Over to you.
No, my one tip is that we're all consumers, and we drive production behavior. To go back to that argument of chicken and egg, who came first, producers will listen. And they respond to market, and we are the market, and if we move, they move. And that's a force, and not to be underestimated.
Thank you so much. This was a really fun conversation to have with all of you. I hope we can have it again. And Bessie made my jacket. Thank you so much for coming to join us.